Good morning everyone. My name is Sarah Doherty and I'm the Marketing and Event Coordinator here at Hornbill. I'd like to welcome and thank you for joining today's webinar where we will be having a presentation on simplifying the challenges of modern ITSM with Abdi Hamisi, Sales Manager, and Steve Boardman, Product Manager here at Hornbill. Just to inform you, Delegate Auto will be muted during the presentation to help facilitate the flow and timekeeping. If you have any questions during the presentation, please type them into the GoToMeeting question facility on the right-hand side of your screen. We will collate questions and answer them at the end of the presentation. Thank you for taking the time to attend. I will now pass you over to Abdi and Steve.
Thanks, Sarah. Good morning, everyone. Thanks for joining us today for our webinar. So over the space of the next, 40 minutes or so, Steve and myself are going to take you through a presentation here on simplifying the challenges of modern ITSM. What we thought we'd do is start with a quick overview of those challenges, look at some of the areas where we've sought to address those challenges from the perspective of a presentation, and then we'll hand over to Steve to take you through a quick demonstration of the solution. So without further ado, let's get started. In terms of the challenges, I guess these are born out of our 20 years experience working in the service management space, going out, meeting customers, working with our customers, meeting new prospects who are looking to change their service desk solution, and just boil those down over our sort of observations of the challenges that people are seeking to address. And out of that, we've come up with 5 key challenges, by no means an exhaustive list, but these are the kind of key areas that we see people putting forward when they're talking about replacing their service desk solution. Again, as I say, not an exhaustive list, but in terms of those challenges, we can probably quickly bring those up here. So the first one really is around upgrades. So, one of the things we hear constantly from people is the challenge around upgrades. They are expensive, they are time consuming, and there's no getting away from that. And no matter how simple it's claimed they are, it's typically not the case. And what we find is that being an IT-centric system, the IT service management tool doesn't tend to see the same sort of levels of funding and commitment from the business as perhaps some of the more business critical systems do, and as a result the sort of upgrade for the IT service desk tends to get pushed out, and the longer you leave that, the bigger the gap, the harder it becomes to justify, and it becomes a bigger and bigger situation to deal with, if you like. So upgrades is certainly one of the challenges we hear about all the time. The second one really is around customization. Again, this sort of dovetails with upgrades, but in its own right, customization is important. No one tool is going to do everything you need it to do straight out of the box, and by its very nature, ITSM is about process, and process is something you need to define. It's unique to you, and in building out your ITSM system, you may need to customize it. So the challenge here is that the more you customize some systems, the more difficult it becomes to upgrade, because customizations often need to be re-implemented, and that obviously adds to the complexity. Third area really is around the complexity around knowledge and expertise. IT service management tools by their very nature are complex things. IT service management is complicated, and the tool shouldn't make it any more difficult than it needs to be. So one of the overriding challenges we find is that a high degree of expertise is required internally to maintain and to manage your service desk tool, and that comes at a cost, both in time and in terms of people. And if that skill base or that knowledge leaves your organisation, we often find people are out on the market looking for a new tool because they end up with a tool that they have no knowledge about or expertise in. The fourth area, really quickly, is around usability. Again, this probably is a consequence of our consumer lives. We've found over the last few years, perhaps the last 5 to 8 years, that consumer apps are becoming increasingly more user-friendly, easy, intuitive, but our business apps tend not to have followed suit, if you like. So a lot of ITSM tools are very powerful but not very intuitive, and so one of the things we hear from customers, and particularly the users of service desk tools, is that would be something they'd like to see addressed. Again, the ability to communicate is quite a key one here, perhaps not something that we've had fed back to us, but more of an observation. The fact that for the most part, one needs to leave the service desk tool in order to communicate with your colleagues or your experts within your organisation. And one of the things we've observed is if you could bring that communication on board with your service desk tool, that becomes much more effective, if you like, as is the need to be able to generate reports easily and quickly. So last but not least, in terms of challenges, the fifth one here really is around cost of ownership, and needless to say the other four challenges all don't help with this, but in its own right, cost of ownership is important, and one of the key I guess hidden costs with any service desk tool is the fact that most service desk solutions that we come across in terms of a replacement tend to be hosted on site, and all of the challenges that come with maintaining and keeping a system like that up and running on site is quite considerable, and that's what we're referring to in terms of hidden costs here. So I think from a cost perspective, if we can address the other four challenges, cost is vastly reduced, but in its own right, having a hosted system sometimes would make more sense anyway. So having said that, what's Hornbill doing to address those for you? So as I say, with our 20 years experience in service management, we've had the luxury of being able to sit back over the last number of years and review what we do, and to look at how the market has changed, and to come up with what we feel is the next generation of service management solutions, if you like, and not just service management solutions. So one of the things we did was we took a look at the marketplace, and the world has changed a lot in the last 10 years. We've had the social revolution, we've had the mobile revolution, we've had the cloud computing come along, and all those things have vastly changed the way we engage, we expect to communicate, the way we operate, and we wanted to reflect that in the solutions that we provide going forward. So as a consequence, what we came up with is what we're considering a very simple, powerful idea, but which was to bring into play a platform which effectively is a collaboration platform for the enterprise, which allows either an organization or teams within an organization to collaborate with each other and to communicate more effectively. So what you get effectively off the back of that is a tool which is familiar, is in keeping with a lot of the social and consumer apps that you might use outside of work in terms of its ease of use and its layout, but also in terms of connecting you with your colleagues, your experts in your organization, allowing you to communicate and share information and knowledge in real time. On top of that then, our sort of emphasis really on bringing that back to people doing their job is around creating a series of line of business applications which effectively can be installed on this collaboration platform called Hornbill. And these line of business apps include things like the Hornbill Service Manager app or the Hornbill Configuration Manager app, which we'll see today during Steve's demo, but also things like our Timesheet Manager and a whole bunch of other apps that we plan to build out in the future. But with our expertise being in service management, it seems to make sense to start there. So what you're going to see today is a combination of applications sitting on the Hornbill collaboration platform, which then effectively give you a solution, and the solution we're going to be demonstrating to you today is around collaborative service management. What we mean by that is a tool that's going to leverage certain key aspects for you. The first of which is being able to share knowledge and ideas, that collaborative way of working. Being able to collaborate with colleagues, now that's in this sense both geographically spread, but also in terms of language, but just simply being able to communicate in real time on the platform. Boosting productivity and being able to work from anywhere are also key aspects of the solution we'll show you today. So, before I hand over to Steve, a few more points really quickly to cover off. So what I'm going to show you today effectively is a cloud-based solution, and through that we are looking to boost your capabilities in certain areas, one of which is in terms of communication, as we see here. So Hornbill is available on any device, from anywhere, at any time, and most importantly also in any language. So if you're working in an organisation that has users, customers across different geographies, this becomes quite an important aspect. The second aspect around communication is the exchange of knowledge, and now we're all familiar with explicit knowledge from an ITIL perspective. It's the documents that you stick in your knowledge base that relate to process and procedure and policy. But what we're talking about here in terms of communication is that tacit knowledge, and that's knowledge that's typically shared word of mouth or via email. And to give you an example, if Steve and I are working on a ticket and I know Steve's the expert in AD, I might reach out to Steve and say, can you give me some information relating to this? That typically will happen not on the service desk tool, but through an email exchange, if you like, and that knowledge is exchanged. The challenge there is that knowledge is hidden away in some mailbox somewhere. It's not actually in the service desk tool. So we'll show you a little bit of a different take on knowledge, but this unlocking of tacit knowledge through bringing all that conversation, all that dialogue onto the Hornbill platform is quite a powerful concept, and we've seen a lot of benefits from that. The sort of final area before I hand over to Steve is just to outline, obviously we're talking about a cloud solution, and perhaps it's key just to identify the fact that there are obviously cloud solutions out there of many different types, and most of the cloud solutions one comes across today are built around the concept of a piece of software that's hosted off-site by the vendor or a third party for you. It may have a commercial wrapper around it that looks like a subscription, but in essence you're renting the software off somebody basically. The real challenge there isn't the fact that you're renting the software, it's the fact that the way that software is written, it's probably a piece of on-premise software that's written over the course of a 12-month release cycle, where after 12 months a big bunch of functionality is delivered to you, and you then have to then go through and test, deploy and upgrade that software, regardless of the fact that it's potentially delivered in the cloud for you. What we're offering from Hornbill is the concept of a service, so it's very much a very different approach, and the thing that makes our system actually very different is the fact that we use a process called continuous deployment, in that, like Facebook, like Google, we don't have the concept of an annual release or a quarterly release. It's literally every time we release a new feature, it's available to you straight away. You don't have to do anything. It's immediately available to you. So this concept of continuous deployment is more than just simply pushing out features. It's the way the system is written, tested, deployed, hosted. It's all one big process called continuous deployment. Okay. So what that means for you as a customer is that there's never any complex, costly upgrades, and that's one of the biggest issues that we've seen customers face. So that removes that complexity. You're always up to date because everything's automatic, and the net result of that is that you have all the latest features the minute that we make them available to you as a customer. So there's no concept of having to wait 12 months for us to release that next big release, and then have to plan, the upgrade, which then takes you a further 3 to 6 months to take advantage of those features. With Hornbill, you get those features straight away, and you benefit from that. There's no service disruption, so everything's automatic, and most importantly, any customizations you make to Hornbill in order to tailor the system to meet your requirements in terms of form design or business process, whatever it might be, is all guaranteed to keep working regardless of all the updates that we make for you. Okay, so I've covered a lot of ground there, but in the interest of getting you some visibility of the tool, let's hand over to Steve.
Thanks, Abdi. Morning, everybody. So as Abdi said, we're just going to spend maybe sort of 20 minutes having a quick look at actually Service Manager, what it looks like, taking a look at it from our end users perspective, having a look at it as an analyst or a service provider, and then having a look at some of the data that we can get out, once we've been adding knowledge, working with tickets, etc. In Service Manager. So what we'll do is we'll start with the service portal. This portal is available, as Abdi mentioned, in any language. It's available, so it supports transparent single sign-on for your users. It can be customized and is brandable codelessly. Here, when I log in as a user, I'm going to receive a tailored experience, and that experience is going to be based on the services that I'm subscribed to as an individual. So whether those services are provided via IT or from our finance team, HR, facilities, whatever it may be, I'm going to have one place to come in and see those services that I'm subscribed to and to take advantage of them. If we take the example of what we're looking at here, I'm logged in as a user, Steve. He's subscribed to multiple services. All those services that he's got are typical IT ones, desktop support, but facilities. He might be a manager, so he might have some management services, but he's also got access to his HR benefits, etc., all from here. Steve can go in and he can favoritise the services he uses most often. He can see ones where he's got active requests running, and he can also see services where the service provider, i.e. IT, in this example, have actually flagged that service is currently impacted or degraded. We can also see across the top here news and bulletins that are cascading across our carousel, and these are all specific to the services that the user is subscribed to, so they're not going to get bombarded with information that isn't relevant to them. But if we drill down and have a look at one of these examples here, perhaps Steve was working from home, struggling to connect to the network over VPN, so he can drill into his home working service to have a look, first and foremost, whether the IT team are already aware of this. Have they created a problem or a known error? Have they published that problem or known error out to the users? Is there a workaround that's going to allow Steve and his colleagues that use that service to be able to self-help and move on with their daily job using that workaround? Perhaps they've published a known issue without a workaround, but Steve wants a very quick and easy way to actually let the IT team know that he's also impacted and struggling with this. Well, using the simple Me Too option here, that will associate Steve or anyone else that uses that function to that particular problem and known error. And that has many benefits. The first and foremost is Steve doesn't have to bother logging a ticket and creating a repeat incident. The problem management team don't have to go looking for those repeat incidents and associate them to that problem or known error. And perhaps more critically though, the moment that the user is added as an impacted user, they can be involved in the ongoing automated communication about the workaround, about the resolution of that problem, without them having to really get too involved. But if we say there was no known issues, maybe the service owner has pushed out some FAQ knowledge, some text and information, maybe embedded some videos about how you can self-help typical VPN connection problems that you may have. Collating all of that data about which FAQs have been accessed, whether users have marked them as being useful or not, all of that information is available to report on. But if there wasn't any knowledge, there weren't any known issues, and the user actually needs to go ahead and engage with the provider of that service, then we can introduce our request catalog. And this is really an ability to define the options that a user has per service. So in this example here for the home working service, I could request and schedule a callback and suggest a good time that's convenient for me and the best number to get me on. Or actually maybe I'm new to the business and haven't actually got my VPN access set up yet, so I want to schedule when would be a convenient time to do that. Or I might simply just want to go ahead and report an issue if there was nothing there to help me. So if I just put in some details here, I'm able to connect. What this is presenting the user with is a concept we call progressive capture, where you can basically build the questions you want to ask and present them in a non-technical fashion to your end users to make that logging experience very, very simple. So here I'm simply just going to provide the information, associate one or multiple CIs to that, and then raise that request. Now, because we know we've raised it against a particular service and a particular request catalog item, we can manage which team it goes to, which service levels are invoked, what fulfillment process is needed. And that fulfillment process can then be visualized to the end user via this heads-up display, so the user can see what the stages of that fulfillment process looks like, where they are in the process, what needs to happen next, etc. All of that information, we can obviously have ongoing dialogue through the timeline, we can update, comment, we can add attachments, etc. All of the common things I'm sure you'd be expecting to do. But if we take a real-life situation where, as a business, we've published 50, 100, 150 services out to our users, and our users are subscribed to multiple services, how do they know where to go to find that information to help themselves, or where they go to raise the relevant type of request? Well, to address that, we've introduced a Federated Search Bar across the middle, which allows the user just to come in and ask those questions. I've got an issue with VPN. Okay, well, here's the known issues that we're aware of. Here's some FAQs that might help. If you're still struggling, here are some of the catalog items that might be relevant to you. Or if we switch that up and say, okay, well, actually, all I'm looking for is to understand how I go about ordering a new mobile. Well, again, here we can see some policies around your allowance as an individual within the business, what's the company policy on that, but also where I can go to either get help or raise a request for a new mobile device. And by clicking and following through on that, it's just going to take me back into another example of progressive capture form with the questions that you're going to need to be able to submit that information. Okay. So with all that in mind, that's all very much about what the end user's experience, but if we switch and have a look at the analyst or the service provider, service owner's view of this, we'll just switch to the user app. Here we can see notifications about that incident that we've just logged, and the fact it's been routed to the first line support team, and I can pick those notifications up on either the platform, I can get an email, I can pick that up on my native iOS or Android apps that are provided with our platform. But if we start by just having a look at what underpinned those options that we saw on the portal and introduce our services, and if we drill down into our home working service, here is where we can see all the things I'm sure you're expecting to see, such as the services being in particular portfolio lifecycle statuses, the ability to subscribe people on any grouping convention that you want to set up, which teams support that service, is the service marked as impacted, all of the configuration options that you've got, the catalog items that you saw on the portal, the ability, if needed, to come in here and customize the forms that the analysts are going to use when they're working on these tickets. So adding fields, removing fields, making them mandatory, putting field validation against them, all of those options are there. And we can do exactly the same for incidents, service requests, problems, changes, etc. against that service. We can drill down and configure and upload the images for those bulletins that we saw going across the carousel. We can configure the FAQs that we want to offer. We can have some visualization of how many times they've been viewed and marked as being useful. But again, perhaps just as importantly, we can start to actually understand how we provide that service. What allows us to provide that service from an infrastructure perspective, what hardware, what software underpins that service, and the ability to actually explore that service graphically. So in this example here, I'm looking at both the requests that have been raised against this service, but also the equipment that underpins it, or the CIs that underpin it. I can reduce that, that noise down if I want to and just look at the actual infrastructure side. And here I can see that the home working service, a particular gateway that's providing access, and some of my users' devices that are connected to that particular gateway. We can see the software that's used, and we can define the bidirectional relationships between the CIs, between the services, and their levels of dependency. Okay. So all that is available. But if we take a look at, move up and have a look at some of the other areas that we're going to be keen to use as a service management team. And the first of those is looking at, I suppose, what our traditional analyst view would be, the request list view on the world. And this is really about giving each analyst a context-driven view of the data they're entitled to see. So in this particular occasion, Graham, who I'm logged in as, has the rights to work with instance problems, service requests, etc. Therefore, they can look at all of the requests they've got the entitlement to see. They can look at those based on the ones that they own personally, ones where tickets are logged against a team they're a member of, or ones where they're logged against a service which their team supports. If a user didn't have the rights to see work with changes, they wouldn't see the icon, and if they weren't a member of particular teams, they wouldn't have access to see that data. Once they've got the data on here, they can come in and they can quickly look for information that they may need by using this multifunctional quick filter on the left-hand side. So if I wanted to look for everything that was VPN related, I can. If I was interested in what my colleague was working on at the moment, I can just type in Brian's name and get that. And if I would happen to be on the phone to Anna, one of our customers, and I wanted to have a look at her open tickets, this is one place that I can do that as well. But as well as having these sort of fixed options that we've got, we also provide the ability for each analyst to come in and build their own views and work the way that they want to work. So here we've got a couple of examples. So I've got a view set up here for my high priority incidents. And if we drill in and have a look at this, it's built very, very simply using a clause builder where I can just come in and I can make the decisions about whether I want to look at high priority incidents generally or whether I wanted to look at those specifically relating to a service that my team support. I can go in and build those conditions. But once I've got that view set up, I can also create charts and content for my own personal dashboard that sit off the back of this. So I might have a high priority incident view, but I might also then be interested in, well, which teams are actually looking after those tickets, or which individuals are in those teams. Or if I'm interested, which sites are impacted by those high priority incidents. Or if I wanted to add a different dimension to that and look at it from a customer point of view, I can come in here, create a donut chart, filter that view down by customer, have a quick preview, make sure that's got some data, yeah, fantastic, and save that here. I've now created multiple charts for that particular view, and using this toggle option, I could just switch quickly between my traditional request list view, my personal dashboard view. Because this is my personal, I can move it around, change it up. I can drill down on the data, it immediately gets me back to that request list and the reduced data set of that. And if I wanted to, I can export that data out or a subset if I needed to. And combine that with the options to configure the columns, etc. You've got quite a lot of flexibility there. But that leads us on quite nicely actually to getting requests logged into Service Manager. And we can do that in a multitude of different ways. First and foremost we saw was the option via the self-service portal. The second option may be via external tools using our XML-based APIs. Third option could be if you're promoting support mailboxes, one or multiple. We have the ability to embed those mailboxes in Service Manager, and for those emails that come into those mailboxes to feed directly in here, where I can either manually review them and raise a request or apply them to an existing request, or using our autoresponder capability, we can automate the logging of a ticket directly from an email, or pass an email through to update an existing ticket if the reference number was in the subject line. All of the things, again, I'm sure you'd be expecting to see here. The last option, though, then, is actually raising a request manually. So the phone rings or somebody walks in, and how do we go about doing that? So just before I drill in and have a look at that, there are two key aspects that underpin that logging experience, but also the fulfillment process that we looked at. So I'm just switching into the admin side here, and I'm just going to introduce these two concepts here. One is business process, and the other is progressive capture. The progressive capture is what we actually saw on the self-service portal when we logged the VPN access issue. But it's really just an extension of what you do in your, if you like, your consumer life when you're booking a holiday online or you're buying car insurance. When you go to those websites, you just get asked one question at a time that drives you through the information you need to provide, and by the end of it, you've logged your ticket, you've logged your holiday, booked your holiday, or you've booked your car insurance, whatever it may be. So what we've done here is give you a graphical canvas to design the questions that you want to ask, build your branching in depending on the answers that are given, and then that will branch down to the other information you want to capture depending on the questions that have been asked. And you can build as many or as few of these as you need, but that's really about the logging experience. Once they have been logged, we then move into the worlds of having business processes to manage the fulfillment side. And we do ship with instant problem change, request fulfillment processes out of the box, but as you can see here, we give you the ability to build any other processes that you need. And the key thing here is that it's not prescriptive in terms of how these work. If you want to have an instant logging process that uses service level timers, and you want the timers to start when the ticket's logged or maybe after the first engagement, that's fine, you set those rules up. If you only want a resolution target, not a response one, again, that's entirely up to you. You can define multiple stages for your processes. You can set up tasks, authorizations, decision points, routing rules, automation of emails going out, and various other actions, and you can build those all in either sequentially or in parallel depending on what your needs are. But the key thing here is that the power to mold and map your processes into the tool is very mature, but all of this, if you like, perceived complexity of what we're building here and the stages can all be hidden from either the analysts that are working on the tickets or the end users that are viewing the tickets and logging them. So we'll go back and have a look at one of those examples in Flow. So I'm just going to go ahead and raise a request here, and one of the things again that I don't have to do here is make an assessment when I pick the phone up as to whether the user's calling about an instant or a service request before I've spoken to them. I don't have to go into the instant logging form or the service request logging form. What I can actually do is use the raise new option and gather the information first before making a decision actually on what type of request I actually want to create. So I'm going to use myself as an example here. I'm going to validate the information, make sure I'm speaking to the right person. Have I called up just for an update on one of my existing tickets? Well, if I have, fantastic, I can just give me the update that I'm looking for and I move on. But if I'm not, then what services do I take from the team? And what options have been defined against those services? So again, I'll request catalog. Am I calling to request that my Mac gets a deep clean, or I want to report a slow performance issue? These are all options you can provide. But if it was something slightly more generic and we needed to ask some more information, then we can follow that route as well. So if I go down the generic desktop support route, maybe I can put here same issue, VPN issue, unable to connect. Do I know enough at this point to categorize it as an instant or a service request or a change? Well, the option is there because I've built it into my flow. Obviously, you can ask this question whenever you need. And just playing devil's advocate here, if I went down the change route, it's going to ask me change specific questions, which on this occasion is just to have an option to upload supporting documents. But I know it's not an instant, it's much more a break fix issue, so I'm going to go down the incident route. And on here, I'm going to be prompted to select categories. I may be prompted to select a priority. You may make those mandatory, it's entirely up to you. Maybe I want to associate one or multiple assets that I'm having this issue from, and then go ahead and click on the Finish button. All this has done, though, is provided a consistent experience for the user regardless of who they're speaking to when they ring up. It reduces your training needs or overhead when you're bringing staff into the business and sitting them in front of this type of tool. It's a world apart from a traditional service management, big form, lots of fields, spreadsheet on steroids type approach that a lot of those solutions have. This is much more akin to what you do in your consumer life. Once I've got that ticket logged with whatever prefixes you want, I can go in and view that ticket. That ticket is then, at the top, is represented by a graphical heads-up display that represents the underlying business process that you've configured and linked to this. And here I can see a number of checkpoint items that have been achieved so far. It's been routed to this team. The priority was set, therefore we've got a resolve by timer configured. But what it's waiting for now is somebody in that team to actually take ownership of the ticket. So what it's actually done on my action bar is taken me in focus to where that action needs to be performed. And if I come in here as Graham and I go ahead and take ownership of this, we'll see that the heads-up display moves forward, moves me on to the next stage, and in this particular example it's created a task for an individual, a role, or a group to go ahead and do some investigatory work into this issue. But there are lots of manual options that you've got available to you working on these requests. I could simply put in a textual update here, or if I wanted to add a screenshot in, I can just simply cut and paste an image in there and store this as the error, and I can update that. That then appears in your timeline, and the timeline is your audit trail of everything that's happened on that particular request, whether it's customer-facing, private, whatever it may be. I can schedule callbacks, I can drag and drop one or multiple attachments in, I can raise link requests or search for related requests. And an example of that might be, are there any other VPN related tickets out there? Do I want to associate my incident to an ongoing problem? If I do link my incident to it, has that problem got a workaround? If so, that's automatically cascaded down to me. I can send emails out, I can BCC, I can add in impacted users, interested parties. I can use snippets or templates for commonly occurring text that I want to fire out in an email, pulling through all the variables from the ticket. All of those types of options are entirely there and available for you to choose to use if appropriate. And again, we're just having a sort of an overview today. So the last thing I'm just going to comment on here from an instant perspective is really the collaborative aspects. So we've talked to, or I'm sure you'll be familiar with using tools where you can work on a ticket as an analyst, do what you need to do, and then assign it away. That's absolutely fine, you can do that. Or you can create tasks and activities for other users to come in and provide their assistance. But what we can also do here is drop in, slightly perhaps more informally, drop in our subject matter experts as members. And here I might invite Rosemary, our change manager, to get involved in this request. And in doing so, I can elevate Rosemary's rights to actually look at my ticket. Maybe she doesn't have the rights to look at incidents normally or to look at tickets that are assigned to my team. But by adding her, I can actually elevate her rights. Rosemary will then get notified that she's been added and she can come in and provide the assistance. But I can support her more in doing that by simply using a mention here, and I can mention Rosemary and say, Rosemary, can you help with this? So Rosemary again will pick up these notifications either through the platform or through her native iOS or Android apps. So again, that's really just to complement the traditional options you've got. But also as an analyst, I might be interested in keeping track of the updates to this ticket, even if I don't own it anymore. So I can simply choose to follow that ticket, and any updates will be pushed up to my news feed, which we'll see in a second. But moving on from this instance, then, okay, well maybe off the back of this I needed to raise a problem, and a problem resulted in a known error, and that known error then needed a change to implement that back into the environment. All of that is absolutely achievable, but I'm just going to jump a couple of steps here and go straight up to raising a change from this particular issue, and I'm going to raise it against a particular service. I'm going to complete the fields that you can create, obviously custom forms. I'm going to mark this as being actually multiple users and of the type risk medium, and I'm just going to go ahead and raise the ticket. So just a different example of a progressive capture that we might use here. And again, it's really just to demonstrate we've created a change with different prefixes, and on viewing that change, we have an underlying business process that's going to guide us through assessments, impact and risk analysis. It's going to decide whether we need backout plans and go through various approval stages that we might have. But on completing these, when we're doing these tasks, each of the tasks that we create, you could define your own personal outcomes, and depending on the outcomes, you can mark things as being mandatory to complete or not. So if I was looking at doing the risk assessment here, if I chose no risk, we'll note that the description has a red mandatory field next to it, as does high risk. However, if I mark this down as normal, I can proceed on without having to put any justification against it. We can plug into our other apps. So an example of that would be our timesheet manager app here. So I can record the time that's being spent on this particular request and pump that information directly into my timesheet app, so that I'm starting to collate information about time being spent on a daily basis. And if I want to drill back into exactly what we did on what day, how much time was spent on project management as opposed to requests, all of those options are available to me by feeding that information directly into the ticket. But as well as having the plugins to timesheets and such like, we also provide different views of changes depending on who you are. We've looked at request lists, and that's a very good view, traditional view for an analyst. But if I'm the change manager, or I'm a service delivery manager, and I've got multiple changes in flight, all at different stages of their life cycle, how do I visualize that? What's an easy way for me to get that real bird's eye view, real-time bird's eye view of what's happening? And here we can introduce our visual boards. And this is that graphical representation, that bird's eye view of all the changes that are in flight against that change process at any given time. All those that are incoming, those that are still going through assessment with CAB approved or in progress. And our business process tool can automate the movement of the requests onto the board initially, and then through the stages of the board, excuse me, depending on what tasks have been completed. So here we can see that change that we're working on is still going through the assessment stage, but it's sat here in the assessed queue. But boards can be used for various other reasons. It could be used to manage internal development cycles, where you've got testing and acceptance testing requirement definitions. It could be used from an instant perspective with your escalation actions and tickets that are approaching breach, having them automatically published onto this board. Harry's just popped up here as our in-app trainer to let you know that there's a new feature. So Abdi mentioned about continuous deployment. this is one good example where if we've got a new feature and we've pushed it out, that we can let our users know about that, as is the ability to have rather larger items with supporting videos and links to our wiki provided to our users on the platform. The key thing here, though, is really using the making use of the data that we have here intelligently. So I'm just going to drill back down to that change that we were working on and say I could go through and complete all those tasks, but just for time's sake I won't. But one good way then to sort of bring all of the collaborative aspects of Service Management back in here is actually having a look at our newsfeed. And our newsfeed is actually a personalised view of all the information that's of interest to that particular analyst. So the analyst I'm logged in as here is seeing updates to the incidents that he's chosen to follow. He's seeing, updates to changes that are ongoing, or documents that have been shared with them, or problems that have been reported, and problems that are being discussed, and colleagues working in their local languages and having the ability to translate that conversation into my local language so I can understand and participate in that dialogue. But all that information that's being pushed up to that particular person's newsfeed is based on workspaces that they're members of, tickets they've chosen to follow, documents that have been shared with them. It's all very specific. And those workspaces can be used, yeah, absolutely for pushing out notifications, but they can also be used where you may want to bring your colleagues together to discuss on a certain subject matter. And a good example of that would be a first-line FAQ workspace, where we might bring in our first-line team plus our experts from our second line or our apps or our business-critical applications and provide them with a forum where they can come in and they can ask questions that their customers are reporting. And their colleagues can come in here and they can provide the answers. And they can provide multiple answers. Users can then vote on which answer was most useful. And this will then provide, on this occasion, James with a validated answer that he can take back to his customer to resolve his issue. And this really comes back to that concept of tacit knowledge that Abdi was referring to in his introduction, where this conversation and this assistance that you're asking may well have been discussed by the coffee machine, may well have been discussed traditionally over email. But all that information is then potentially lost if the user leaves the business or gets promoted or is no longer involved in the process. But having that information captured in the tool allows us to reuse that knowledge going forward. So using the global search bar at the top, I could go looking for VPN-related issues. I could narrow the search down to just things that have been updated or posted in the last month since we performed an update in that area, or posted by John because he's our expert in that particular area, or I'm only interested in looking in that particular workspace. On doing so, I can narrow the results down, get the relevant scores back, see other questions that have been asked, see the answers that have been provided, and the validation that have been against them, and I can then reuse that knowledge. But we don't forget for a second that explicit knowledge that Abdi referred to here. So all that formal documentation, your change processes, etc., all of that is catered for on here as well. So in this example here, we've just dropped into our document manager app, and we're looking at our change document process that's got review dates, it has life cycle management, we can publish these documents out to libraries, we can share the documents with individuals and give them roles and responsibilities, we can keep full revision histories of those documents so that we only ever have one version in circulation. We don't get back into the issue where you've got multiple versions of a document on your network share, or maybe a document being passed around via email and again not knowing whether it's the current and up-to-date version. You can add tagging to help with searches. You can use tags to create self-organizing collections. A lot of capability in here. But the Document Manager app is just another example of a line of business application that's also available on the platform alongside Service Manager, alongside timesheet management, alongside having your mailboxes and access to Customer Manager. All of these are provided on the platform for you. In addition to that, you've also got access to your activities from any of those applications that you're working on. You can utilize bookmarks to effectively put a mark against any document or request you want to revisit. Instant messaging is provided on the platform. You can create boards and various other views of your activities. So if you were doing things like morning checks and you wanted to make sure they were being done in the comms room or the data center, or if you're interested in just looking at the comms room and seeing which ones have been complete or actually overdue and are outstanding, all of that capability is there. The last thing I'm going to do just before I hand back to Abdi is just give you a view on some of the output that you can get from this tool if you're going to obviously the effort of putting all of this data in and working your tickets through. So we looked at the front end personal dashboards and views, but we complement those with our advanced analytics. This allows you to leverage our trending engine that's provided on the platform. this allows you to create your own measures. The measures might be how many incidents are we receiving or resolving on a daily, weekly, monthly basis. But most importantly, setting targets for those measures and then seeing how you're performing again on a daily, weekly, monthly basis against those targets. What does the trend look like? Once you've got all these measures set up with your average resolution time, first time fix, etc., why not take those measures and consume them and create widgets, create traditional charts or data lists as you need them, upload or add those widgets then onto your personal dashboards and create them as overviews or looking at particular areas. If you take knowledge for argument's sake, you might be interested in what are your most viewed FAQs, or if you haven't published knowledge out there, what are the actual terms that the users are searching for? So every time someone actually enters in something on our self-service portal and searches for it, we record that, which will allow you to actually look at the areas you need to add in. Who's actually providing feedback, positive or negative? All of these types of dashboards you can create. But if you've got lots of dashboards and lots of data that you want to share, you can share the dashboards with individuals or roles, or if you want to put these onto a big screen or a plasma screen, you can do things like this, where you can daisy-chain dashboards together, and you can show multiple widgets on those dashboards transitioning through on a slow interval. This is probably the easiest and quickest way to give you a feel for the types of dashboards that you can utilise, and the ones that we've kind of looked at on here. So we'll just let that loop around and finish, and again here's our knowledge dashboard that we had. So on that, I'm just going to pass you back to Abdi, who's going to talk a little bit more about, again, some of the benefits of the actual solution that we're offering.
Brilliant, thanks Steve, great demo. Just a quick reminder, obviously if you've got any questions, please do feel free to type them into the pane on the GoToWebinar session, and Steve and I will come to those in a few minutes and answer those for you. So just picking up from Steve's demo, just to kind of wrap up, why Hornbill? So I guess we just want to share our core values with you and a couple of other things, and we'll bring this webinar to a close. So as an organisation, we have 3 core values. The first one is customer first. We're all about our customers. Everything we do is for the benefit of our customers, and they're at the forefront of all our thinking. Everything we try to do through partnership, through collaboration. So again, very much about partnering with our customers. Indeed, the way the product is developed is through an agile development approach. All the features and functionality that customers propose and put forward on our forums, that's the kind of mechanism that drives our development, if you like. So it's all about collaborating with our customers to make the tool better all round. And then the third core value for us is about quality, not compromise. Everything we want to build is the best, most efficient, most usable solution possible. And again, that comes through being very strict in this respect of building a good quality tool. Okay, and again, we'll talk a bit more about how we reinforce that. We've also just want to spend a couple of minutes just talking about our 30-day satisfaction guarantee. You may have come across this on our website, but just to expand on what this means. The reason for this is around taking out the risk that's involved in procuring a solution like this and making a decision to buy a solution like this, or to subscribe to a solution like this in our case. And what we've done here is to seek to de-risk that whole process for you as a customer, and what we have engineered into our sales process in effect is the concept of this 30-day satisfaction guarantee. And the emphasis here being on you satisfying yourself that the tool is fit for purpose, that it does provide the reporting you need, it will underpin the processes you want to deliver, it does perform, it's meeting your expectations, ticking off all the areas that you would expect to see in a solution. Now, you think about the way this traditionally happens. Normally you have to kind of base your decision on a couple of slick demonstrations from somebody like Steve, a bit of negotiation, maybe 1 or 2 quick meetings, and then you've bought a tool and you've signed up for 3 years, or you've paid out a huge capital investment for a tool. It's then when you start to get hands-on with the tool that you discover it doesn't do all the stuff you expected it to do, or it's falling down in some areas. So really for us, this is a key thing, and we want you to come on board as a partner who fully understands what you're getting into with regards to Hornbill. So as a consequence, what we do is give you the opportunity to put us to the test. And in that 30-day period, we offer you, in essence, a number of things. The first of which is we'll give you 30 days of free service. That gives you hands-on time with the solution. You get to live with it, you get to understand it, you get to put it to the test. Okay. The second part is we'll actually implement that solution for free. So it's not just here's the solution, how to play with it. We'll work with you. We'll allocate one of our product specialists who will come at this as if it's a live implementation. We'll set up the system, we'll configure it, we'll integrate it, we'll bring in your data. So you get to see the solution working with your data in place and the key integrations in place, so you have a good understanding that it does meet your requirements. Thirdly, we'll also provide training, so not only will we show you how to do that, but we'll actually in effect train you along the way so that you have this expertise in-house should you decide to carry on and to subscribe to Hornbill. It's only at this point, once you've had all three of those things in place over this 30-day period, that we actually then ask you if you want to subscribe to the solution, in which case if you do, we'll go forward and subscribe. If you don't, we just walk away, no hard feelings, and we will have done all that work to make sure that you had an informed position to make a decision from. So this is a really key concept for us, and as an organisation, this is central to our offering. As you can see up there, over 95% of customers who go into this process come out as a subscriber, and that's a testament to the fact that the tool does live up to their expectations indeed. Okay. So having said that, why Hornbill? As an organisation, we stand we seek to stand out, if you like, and innovation around technology and product is the obvious place to innovate, but also we look to innovate around our commercial offering and the way we go to market, as I've just talked about the 30-day process there. But in other areas, we see ourselves as breaking new ground, if you like. So the first is obviously making sure that you have a full understanding in our space that what you're looking into here is a service, not software. It's a continuously deployed solution, so it's always up to date. There are no upgrades. You don't have to stop, think about upgrading the service desk, which is a relief because typically that's the last tool that gets upgraded in any IT department that we've worked with as a general statement. So that's a really powerful key message, and it's worth challenging any other vendors that you might be speaking as to how you get access to new functionality. What's involved? What do I have to do as an organisation to get all that new functionality that you're building? In fact, not only building, but that you as a customer are paying the vendor to build as part of your subscriptions or your maintenance contract. Price for life. So again, we talked earlier on about the fact that for most people buying a new piece of software or subscribing to something, you tend to end up subscribing and tying yourself in to a contract where there's a concept of price increases built into that contract. Well, one of the things we've done as Hornbill is decided that we don't want to go down that approach. So as a customer, we will basically guarantee you that the price you sign up to is the price you pay for as long as you're a customer. So there's no risk involved of price increases. It's literally as straightforward as that. We will lock the price at the moment you sign up on the plan that you sign up to, and if we do increase the price of Hornbill over time, you're insulated from that, so that's something you don't have to worry about, and I'm sure that your procurement people would be very, very pleased with that. Train for life. We talked about earlier on the need to have internal expertise, and whilst that's much reduced with Hornbill because of the nature of the tool and the fact that there isn't the need to maintain the back-end infrastructure, environment, need to do upgrades, patching, all of that kind of stuff goes away with Hornbill because it's a service. There's still obviously a requirement for somebody internally to have some expertise in the tool in terms of configuring it and setting up your processes and such like. So the idea of training for life is that if you have one of these experts leave your organisation, all you need to do is let us know. As a result, we will then take on the challenge of or the burden of training that person up, and we'll keep doing that for as long as you're a customer, and we'll do that for free. So you've always got somebody internally who knows how to manage Hornbill. That might be one or more people. It's your choice. Last but not least, we have the concept of the no contract tie-in. So again, going back to our contracts, one of the things we've observed is that for the most part, customers sign up to a contract with a vendor, particularly in the cloud space, and you're then locked in for 3 years, 2 years, whatever it might be, 5 years. And the idea there is that whether you like the tool or you get on with the tool or the product's going in the direction you want it to be going in, you're tied in contractually, and you can't do anything about that until the end of that period. So what we've set our bar out to state is the fact that we want happy customers, not contractually bound customers. So in essence, as a Hornbill customer, if you don't feel that the product's providing value or you don't feel that you're getting the service you expect, then you have the right to just walk away at any time without any notice period, and there's no lock-in, if you like. So that sets us on a path where we have to behave in a certain way. We have to make sure that the product is of a high quality, that the service is reliable, etc., etc. Because as a consequence, our customers have the right to vote with their feet, if you like. Okay. So those are 4 key differentiators. So if you need any sort of justifications to go with Hornbill, there's four very good reasons why Hornbill's a good choice. So just to kind of wrap up before we do questions, quick slide on pricing. So we talked about price for life. In very simple terms, we have a very simple, transparent pricing plan. It's based on subscriptions. It's entirely scalable for small and large teams alike. It's based on a simple subscription per user per month, and it starts at £42.50 per user, but that scales with volume. So the more users you add to the system, the cheaper that becomes per user. And again, it's this curve that we effectively lock for you. So at the point when you sign up, we will snapshot that curve against your account, and it's up along that curve that you would slide if you add or remove users over time. There's no choice for us to move that curve up in terms of the overall price of that curve. So with that said, let's take any questions. I'm sure we have a couple of questions here, so let's just bring up the window and we'll take those questions very quickly.
Right, okay, I've got one here, Abdi, asking about where our data centres are located.
Okay. Okay, no, that's a good question to ask. Again, obviously, we have a number of different zones where you can subscribe to Hornbill, i.e. US or North America and Europe, but if you're subscribing to the European zone, data centres are in the UK, and your data stays within the European Union.
Fantastic.
From a data protection perspective.
Fantastic, great. And the practical one perhaps I can take regarding importing of data and asset data here. So we've got a variety of different options for getting asset data in. We've got the painful option to manually sit there and do that if you want to. Second option is using a CSV import tool. So maybe non-networked assets, mobiles, etc. You can bring those in on whatever basis you need to. Or we do have a scheduled import utility which you could run locally against likes of SCCM or any sort of SQL backend solution, and have those new CIs or updates to existing CIs pushed up to your instance on a scheduled basis that's convenient for you.
Excellent, brilliant, thanks Steve. So with that said, let's bring the presentation to a close. Thanks for your time, and I'm going to hand over to Sarah again just to wrap up.
Thank you, Abdi and Steve, for taking us through that presentation. I hope everyone found it useful. If you have any additional questions, please do not hesitate to contact me or your relationship manager. Finally, thank you to everyone for your time today. Goodbye.